And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. I've got Stephen Sopko with us today, and we're going to get right into it because I got a lot to say to this man, and he's got a lot to say to you. So, as we always do, Stephen, no one knows Stephen better than Stephen. So, Stephen, give us some backstory, bring us up to speed, and we'll get into our conversation.
Very cool. Thanks. It's great to be here. So my background, former military, I exited the service and went to work for an oil and gas company and then went into tech. Dell, and was responsible for negotiating a lot of Dell's contracts with its customers, jumped from that into the gaming industry, and then from the gaming industry into doing international work with India, UK, Europe, you name it. After doing that for a few years, I went to work for Oracle, the big software company that runs basically the entire world. Everybody gets a payroll check, everybody's medical records, they all go through Oracle. And so I was responsible for Europe, Middle East, and Africa negotiations and business practices. That was a big team, big responsibility, 60 plus countries, all that sort of stuff. And then I hit this huge reversal in my personal life and had to give it all up and move back to Florida, became a single parent, unfortunately. Really had to reinvent myself from scratch. Started a company really negotiating against Oracle, my former employer, and that company became very successful. We have about a quarter of the Fortune 500 as our clients, and over 10 years really built it into something that's an industry leader. And then hit another wall and realized I built a company that could grow to about 3 times its current size, and there wasn't much left for me to do as a co-founder. So that led to me exiting. And very amicable. If you're being audited by Oracle, Palisade Compliance is your go-to. But I'm really not in it anymore because there's an old expression in the South, you don't wrestle a pig because you get dirty and the pig enjoys it. Wrestling that pig for 10 years was a long time. So I'm really excited to be doing what I'm doing now, which is after a brief stint in the space industry, doing a couple things. I'm helping people move things through their sales funnel faster, particularly when they're selling to the Fortune 500. But I'm also helping people with something I call a career narrative, an arc of stories that talks about who you are and where you've been. So that's what I do today.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait to get into the storytelling aspect, right? And really how you put that in here with describing people. That's going to be a lot of fun. So pretty storied career. Stephen done quite a bit with a lot of big companies, which is impressive. Navigating those in of themselves is something I could never do. Okay. Cause I just don't, I made my 4 years in the Marine Corps, then realized I don't take direction well. So
That's the place to learn it.
That's right. And it was. I learned fast. But yeah, so I kind of, went out on my own thing. Been doing that ever since. So, but yeah, I love it. So let's kind of get into it because I like what you're doing. One thing when you go from, I'll call multiple careers. Would you describe yourself as multiple careers? So you
Absolutely.
do the multiple career thing at a high level. And you're not like, I went from this burger joint to the pizza joint. Okay. You're doing some high level stuff and Fortune 500 stuff, which is awesome. So that transition, not just moving company to company, but like you say, it's a little bit of time in the space arena too, but getting out of there, was that like, let me take a break and then figure out what I'm going to do? Or did you know what you're going to do?
I think each time I've done it, because I have jumped industries a couple of times, each time I've done it, I did it on purpose, but I was always surprised by what I found when I got there. So, you can take a year, which is what I did, getting ready to make the move, learning about it, learning who the players are, that sort of thing. But until you've actually made the leap, you aren't really getting the real information. It's basically the difference between book learning and learning in reality.
Yeah.
And so that was each time I've done it, when I made the jump out of tech into gaming and when I made the jump out of tech again into the space industry, each time when I actually got there, I learned a lot more once I was actually getting into the middle of it.
Yeah. That's, it's like you're reading the job description on Indeed. That's about as much as right? And that's all lies. So it's like,
Right.
well,
Right.
maybe not lies, but it's we'll call it somewhat fabricated, right? Because we've all written for those positions, right? We're all trying to hire someone, so it's kind of a different animal. So I can see definitely that when you get there, and there's nothing like the real world. I mean, you're in it now. It's baptism by fire, right? You got to get up to speed and start adapting very quickly. So that's really a good thing.
I think you put your finger on something though with job descriptions, because a lot of people complain about how hard it is to get through the automated tracking systems and all the nonsense that goes with getting a job. And it all starts with the job descriptions. And you've written a lot of them, I've written a lot of them. And so often we would get into a huge argument about what was the job. So there's a manager here, there's a manager there, everybody's fighting about it. And what you end up with is the lowest common denominator. It's the stuff that people just didn't care enough about to fight about anymore. And that goes into the job description. Has nothing to do with the actual job. But then 5 years ago, managers, we'd get a stack of resumes basically because nobody paid attention to the job description. And we'd go through the resume and we'd find somebody that could really do the job. Today, managers never see the resumes unless it's just random chance and it happens to bounce through the pachinko machine and come out the bottom. And it all starts with those awful job descriptions, and so many of them are 10, 15, even 20 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. And now you get on ZipRecruiter or Indeed, one of these hiring sites you're trying to get out there. And now you got algorithms trying to read this and put them in front of people. So you usually get a lot of that don't really fit, right? Because they're trying to think. And I don't think the descriptions, like you said, are done properly. And it's this over negotiation of what it is. Like we kind of found some great workarounds with that with a lot of different things because even in the service and trades industry, which is primarily my audience, right? Like we're looking for skilled workers. We need people, and I'm just going to make this as a declaration. You're not going to find them on LinkedIn.
Right.
Okay.
Very true.
You're not going to find your next great plumber on LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah.
Just no matter what anyone tells you. Okay. Not happening, nor should they be there. Right.
Yeah, in fact, if you do, you probably need to see that as a red flag. They spend a
That's
lot more
right.
time on social than they are on plumbing.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. I can find you on Google. That's where I'm going to find you.
Right.
But it really is that ability to court and employ, someone new for the team. There's a courtship. I try to tell them, I said, you're selling. You got to sell this position to whoever it is, your ideal candidate, right? So it can be a little bit challenging. And when I work with a lot of my owners, just to get them to think that way, it takes a little bit. Like you got to think a little bit different, on who you're looking for. You think you're just going to get a guy who can do the job, and that's not really what you're looking for. Do you find that too?
Absolutely. Do you think a part of it, particularly in the skilled trades, there's just this great sucking sound as everybody retires and people really aren't coming in? I think about, what is it, Mike Rowe talking about
Yep.
that huge gap. One of my sons, I have three 21-year-old boys, and one of them is becoming an airplane mechanic. He's about three-quarters of the way through airframe and propulsion. And he is seeing it firsthand, just that absence of people, because again, maybe it's cultural, maybe it's generational, but it's scary to actually have to do something to fix something. It's much easier to write a paper about how somebody else should fix something. And so I think that we feel like people are lucky to have the job and they're lucky to get the interview. But so often in the skilled trades, but also in every other part of our economy, there just aren't enough really competent people to do the work. And so I think that you're absolutely right. Selling the job as the employer, as the hiring manager, is a big part of the skill set.
Yeah, because you're fishing in a shallow pool. You know what I mean? It's like you have the right bait, you got the right lure, however, whatever fishing, metaphor you want to use, you got to be able you're trying to get top talent. And when top talent is limited, people are fighting. So they're paying more, they're looking for more, but you're more or less trying to speak to them and try to get people, and we don't have to get into this, but it reminds me of when you're trying to bring people into a culture. Okay. Like they don't want to just come to work because they're really good at what they do. They want to come and work for that purpose. They want some recognition. They want the quality pay, right? They want those things. Other people are trying to sell them on, I'll pay you a lot, right? So they're trying to compete on pay. And this is where my owners, I have to shift the thinking because they're thinking about the money. Money's important, but it's like third on the list.
Sure.
So they
Sure.
want purpose, recognition, then quality pay. Yeah, they want to make good money. Don't get me wrong. But if you think you can just lure people with money, remember how fast they're going to leave for a little bit more money.
Well, that's
right?
true. And it's interesting. Do you find that so many of the owners, they'd be the first one to say, I'm not going to compete for my company's business with my customers on price because it's a race to the bottom
Yep,
and
that's
nobody
right.
wins. But that same person races to the top in terms of salary, trying to hire people on board instead of focusing on those fundamentals, those intangible things that go with making somebody happy to be there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 100%. Like and when we do it, when we shift that thinking, it changes everything. Like
Right,
people
right,
are taking pay cuts to come work at the company because that's what it means. Because
right.
they love the culture, the purpose, all this stuff. And I'm not saying they're slashing their money in half, but like, hey, if they got to take $1 an hour less, they're coming.
Well, when I left tech to go into the gaming industry for the first time, it was the first time I'd ever jumped into an industry where people were willing to take a lot less money because they wanted to work in that industry. They wanted to design games. They wanted to do that. And so I had to explain to my wife, yeah, it was a 75% pay cut, but I'm just so lucky to be here. She said, tell me about the 75% pay cut.
Yes,
I was
yes,
like,
yes. I thought you were good at math. She probably said, I
yeah,
thought
yeah,
you would be good at math.
I wasn't there for long, but I sure did learn
Right.
a lot.
Yeah. But it's just a testament to that. I mean, it's kind of that you're not building one thing. That's the point, right? I mean, you got to understand there's different levels. People are attracted by different things to a workplace, right? And they may know what they're getting into, they may not. I had one company down in South Carolina. Their employees stayed for 25 and 30 years. Like everybody, nobody left. Someone had to die or retire for you to get a job there.
Right.
Like, I want to talk to that guy. Okay, like what are you doing down there that you have people come and stay anywhere for that long? I was down at Dollar General, their original warehouse in Kentucky. And there's a guy there, and I'm talking, walking around, and this guy goes, see that guy on the forklift? And I go, yeah. He goes, 50 years he's been here.
Wow.
50. I'm like, driving the forklift? He goes, yep, 50 years.
Well, now
And I was
there's a
like,
yeah, there's a plus and a minus to that. I mean,
uh
because
huh.
with a skilled trade, you want somebody who's going to grow over time, that sort of thing. When I was in the government, we used to talk about somebody would say, "Well, I have 20 years of experience," but they didn't. They had 1 year of experience repeated 20 times. They'd never learned
Amen.
anything after that first year. And so one of the challenges that we run into, I think sometimes is I worked for this big tech company once, and they said you're either a 2 year person or a 20 year person. And the tech company's culture was awful. It was an absolutely horrible, toxic culture. But what they did was they beat you down during those first 6 months. So you didn't think you could get a job anywhere else. So, people were there, but it was a hostage situation. It wasn't, a wonderful
Wow.
culture. So I think that there is that thing. When I did automation, I would go into companies and I would fire lawyers. That was my job. I would go from company to company and find where lawyers on the inside team weren't really keeping up. And I would go through and I'd automate it or move it offshore. And I found so many people that it was like that movie Up in the Air, where when I would have the termination conversation with them, they were just relieved. They were just, now I have to go do something else.
Yeah.
I couldn't let myself go and think about doing other things while I was here. But now that the choice has been taken away from me, it's almost a relief that I get to go now and figure out what I do next.
It's funny, and I talk about this a lot with my stuff too. It goes right with this point. You can make people more competent. Okay, that's like the easiest thing you can do in your business. Get them another certification, get them more training, right? They'll get better at stuff. We can do that. But how do you make them better as people? Like it's got to be beyond just the job because you want them to take this home, right? So I'm always like, yeah, competency really important stuff there, but how do we make them better as people? What other things we can do in their levels to move up in a position, inside the position that actually makes them better people? Because if you're able to do that, again, they start seeing the purpose. They know that. They start operating in that. Now they're getting a different skill set, not just competency on that, and they become a little better, more rounded, and their life at home changes, stuff like that. I mean, I'm talking high view here, but when
Sure.
you do that, that's how you affect a lot of people. And it makes people want to be there because they're getting fulfilled, not just being a better worker.
You nailed it. And I think that was the thing I had to learn when I started Palisade. I went from culture after culture where we never said it as executives, but the tone was really, you're lucky to be here. just you're lucky to have this job, this, that, and the other. The company never felt like it really had to stretch to make people happy. Then I started a company, and the first 5 people I hired were the only 5 people on the entire planet who knew how to do this one particular job. And, it's really crawling inside very complicated software setups and figuring out, where does the money go? How, because any big payroll system, there's a dozen different licenses that are all clicking together there. And it's worth millions and millions of dollars if you screw it up. And so I hired these 5 people, and I opened my leadership toolbox that I'd had for 25 years. And I had one tool in it, and that was fear. I could make somebody afraid that they were going to lose their job, or we were going to lose the client, or that sort of thing. But suddenly I have these 5 people who are completely irreplaceable. And fear didn't work with them. They knew I wasn't going to fire them. And so right about 2017, 2018, I realized I've got to upskill. I mean, my leadership skills are not fit for the moment. And so I went to IPEC and I became a coach and started to learn more about how to frame a future and work with the people and all that sort of stuff. And the challenge was, they'd known me when we all worked together for the big software company. They'd known me for 5 years at this company. So there's that feeling that a leopard doesn't change its spots. So sometimes the hardest people to convince are the people who knew you at your worst.
Right.
And so you're trying to turn over a new page as the leader. It takes a long time for them to trust, if ever.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. You're almost, you got to go somewhere else. You
Yes.
got to be that different person and go somewhere else, and no one will know. Right. I mean, there's great movies made about that exact same thing. Right. So people, they just, he's the best guy I ever met. What do you mean he killed someone? It's like, well, that
Right.
was then, this is now, so yeah, but you're right though. And I think when I work with companies too, it really is, I'll go back to the word purpose. What we really want to do is fulfill that. We create what's called the strategic vision. So everyone in the company knows exactly where we want to go, not where we're at, right? Where we're going to go in the next 18 to 24 months. They understand how they're the hero in that journey, right? It's really important. If they're not there, this doesn't get done. We
Right.
understand who we serve, how we serve them, why we serve them, right? All this stuff is in there. It's in story form. These people, when they take it, we read it, and people like weep. People
Right.
cry sometimes because it's like, this is what I want to do. This is purpose. This is where I want to be to make a difference, right? I don't want to just come put A into B all day. So it just to go along with what you're saying, it when I work with a company and you kind of tell them this, just like we did, like there's people right now listening going, yeah, right, whatever. Like, sure, that happens. I said the same thing. I said this, I go, no way is this going to move someone. And I roll this thing out, and people, it's unbelievable, the response. I think people are just starved of that. They just don't get it anywhere in life. They got this crappy social media, totally unfulfilling, scroll till you fall asleep, right? Does nothing for you. Occasional dopamine hit here and there. Everything else they do is just unappreciated. They don't have any real purpose. They don't know why they're going to work every day other than to pay the bills, right? So to me, I think it's incumbent on the business owner to create an environment, a business that can serve their real needs, right? So it's a win-win for everyone. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I think that in the absence of understanding the vision and where the company is going, I think people who are on the team, all they have to think about is, well, we're rudderless. We're not really going anywhere. And therefore, our competition's going to eat our lunch. I'll be laid off at some point because the company is not going to be successful. So I think there's a sense of, oh, thank God you figured out where you want us to go. Okay, great. I can buy into that because it gives me something to answer those fears that come into the back of my mind in the middle of the night. Is this job even going to be here in a year? Because is the company going to be here in a year? So I think there's an additional dimension to giving your people a sense of where the company is going. You do give them a sense of how they fit into it, but you also give them a way to answer their own fears.
Right. That's great. That's good insight. That is. I didn't think of that. That's important. And it's funny. I'll just, as an owner, I'm a different person. You talk about it being a different person.
Right.
I'm not the person I was my first 20 years of business, because I wasn't. I was a good guy. You probably didn't want to work with me unless you were just like me. Okay, so
Right.
only people, if you just wanted to work and be quiet, we'll get along fine.
Yep.
But that was who I was. And as I tell my children, be who I am, not who I was. I'm a very different person now. You don't know the old me. Okay, that was pre-kids and everything. So but I'm with you. And I think when they don't have the purpose and they have those fears, you know what their go-to is going to be? It's going to be the money.
Right.
They're
Right.
going to
That's
get
the only
lured. Oh,
certainty.
yep. They're going to say,
Yeah.
oh, if I can make $3 more an hour, I might as well go over there because I can be miserable there, but at least I'll be making more money.
Right. Right.
There's nothing to keep them there, so they're going to sell you out very easily. And I think that's part of the sightedness, Stephen, of owners, operators, even managers. Okay, the guys in the C-suite, they're not looking at that. Too many times they're just about the production, the bottom line. And I'm not some business hater. I'm not against the man. I'm just saying that you can run a business so much better if you can look at the things that we're talking about today and implement this stuff. It's going to make your life at least 10x better
Yeah. And you
as an
can
owner.
And you can do both. I mean, owners don't survive if we don't have a really hard-edged look at reality. Because the nice thing about being in a big company is you are insulated from reality. You can mess up over and over and over again, and the Fortune 500 company isn't going anywhere. But as an owner, we mess up one time and the company's gone. So it makes us really, really focused on, okay, what's this going to cost? What's the benefit? How am I going to keep the doors open? How am I going to keep my customers? How am I going to focus on the competition? What a lot of owners don't want is one more thing. How am I going to help people be happy?
Gotcha.
Man, dude, if I keep the doors open, I expect everybody to be happy, but that's a trap because it's not your job as an owner to make everybody happy. You can't make another person happy, but you can sure make them unhappy. And I think that if you do nothing else, if you've got so many other things you're thinking about and you don't want to think about how to help people be happy, just look at the things you're doing that make them unhappy and start there.
Yeah. Great. That's great advice. Yeah. There's nothing easier to do than make your people unhappy.
Well, Well, and that big company mindset. So many people think I'm going to hire somebody from a big company and they're going to come in and help my small company be successful. And I nearly torpedoed my small company doing that because I was asking everybody to do stuff that's going to be great when we're a $20 million company. We're a $500,000 company in the first year. We're adding all this bureaucracy and process and procedure years before it's needed. And I was just making my people miserable trying to bring all that big company mindset in. And every time they'd complain about it, I thought, oh, well, they're just being lazy. No, they weren't. They were saying, look, dude, you're asking me to do what in the big company would be three different people's jobs. I'm doing it, but please don't trowel all this nonsense on top of me. That's that. So that was the biggest thing I had to realize. It took me a couple of good years to realize that I was part of the problem. I wasn't the whole problem, but I was a big
Yeah.
part of it. And
Yeah.
start to reverse out of that.
Yeah, it's important. I like that's why I focus on small to mid-sized businesses because I really like the agility aspect of a business. Like we to stick with the rudder analogy, man, we can turn those ships pretty fast. The bigger ships, they don't turn so fast. There's a lot of work to get something to change a little bit of a direction. Too many committees, too many people, too many layers. I like to see that agility. I like that ability to adapt quickly. It's just part of who I am too. So I fit in there really good and I can drive that way. But the results are awesome. I just love results,
Sure.
and you get results that way.
If we do it, I mean, one of the challenges, I've started, I think, 7 businesses. I'm 2 and 5. I've had 2 successes. I've had 5 failures. And what I see as the common thread with the failures was I got something that started to work and I was really hesitant to change it. So I took that nimbleness you're talking about and I gave up that advantage trying to make the world fit the map I had in my head of what it was supposed to look like. And the times I failed were when I didn't pivot fast enough. And so I think you're right. If you're an owner, if you're a small business person, even 50, 60, 70 people, couple $1 million a year in revenue, you can give up being nimble and you've lost your biggest advantage over your competition.
In that ability to be nimble, to be adaptable, what I tell them the byproduct is you can focus on profit creation because all the extra every layer, payroll, payroll. It's all this stuff. It's a drag. It's an anchor on a company. Okay, we got a lot of ship analogies. Okay, we got okay,
You'd almost
but
think I wasn't in the Air Force.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I'm a Marine, so I kind of had to be on a boat for a
I
little
figured
while, but
you earned the right. So,
that's right. That's right. But it's just it's when you look at that, like, listen, I try to redirect their vision to the profit, because your business can do more with the more it profits, not just makes in revenue, and that ability to be adaptable and nimble. You can see new market openings, right? You can see new offerings you can create, and you can implement them very quickly. Right. And that's the thing. That's why I like it. Again, it isn't this whole up this long ladder to get a yes on something you already know. If you went up 2 rungs, it'd be yes. Right. So to your point, it's really important. Again, like you said, when you got 5 or 50 employees, it doesn't matter. If you focus on, again, taking care of the people you have, delivering the highest value you possibly can, you're never really going to want. You're going to have all the work you need. You're going to have the best customers, the customers you want to work with, and you're going to have excellent profit margins. So there's a real advantage to those kind of things. Now, obviously, you can win at the big level, right? They're not Fortune 500 for nothing. Okay, they're up there Fortune 100. They get all that, but if that's not your realm, like for a lot of our listeners here, just man, if I had 20, those they're thinking, if I had 25 guys, man, that's 7 trucks. That's 8 trucks. That's a lot of work to keep going.
right.
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 I used to always say, Stephen, I dealt with a lot of landscapers and stuff like that back in the day with my water feature business. I said, you can be small or you can be big. You can be like a 2 crew, or you got to be like a 15, 20 crew. If you're a 5 or 7 crew, you're going to have trouble.
Yes.
Because you got to keep them working. You're always on the edge of not having enough work.
Right.
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 So I'm like, you need to kind of choose the sweet spots, that 2 crew, 3 crew, maybe, or go big.
Well,
You
and
know,
I think so much, there are certain businesses that are cyclical too. I know that during the summer months, my AC business, my people are going to be run off their feet. It's going to be way more work than my team can handle. So I don't make changes to my business during the summer months. But when it slacks off a little bit, I'm in Florida, so AC is life. But if there's a time of year when your business, because of the cyclical nature of the market, the work falls down, that's the time to be sharpening the spear, sharpening the saw,
exactly.
doing
I
the
love
things you
it.
need to do. But that was the thing with my business, the startup for 10 years. That is a very cyclical business. There's only one time a year where the giant software company will be reasonable, and that's at their end of fiscal year. So from about February through June, we were busier than we could possibly handle. But then July, August, business fell off a cliff. And so I knew if I didn't make the changes in my business I needed to by about the middle of January, hey, I'm not doing anything until July. We're just gonna
Right.
survive, with it. And every time I would start to make a change, to your point, when you have enough people to do the work during the busy time, but you're chasing a lot of work during the slack time for them, that's a rough business model.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a thing, my go-to saying throughout the busy season, because the landscaping, we got seasons. I just kept saying
Yes.
February, because we wrap it up in the middle of December. All right. We're done with that. Then there's nothing. Okay. Until March. Okay. So by February, cash flow is nil. Guys aren't working, right? You're like, okay, I got to get it. So I'm saving, I'm planning, I'm allocating like for February. I got to be able to get through February. I can do
Right.
everything else. So that month is tough. So it just became this mantra I started using with all my other contractors. Like, well, what's your slowest season? And they'll tell me this. And I'll say, that's what we're going to focus on.
Sure.
We're going to do 2 things. Either we're going to try to get more work during that season. How do we do that? Create a new spoke on the hub, so to speak,
Right.
or we're going to prepare to kind of coast, but comfortably. We're
Sure.
not going to be worried about cash flow. It's all taken care of. Guys are still working. I'm getting paid, the whole thing. So again, back to that being nimble, that adaptability aspect, we have to look at those things. And sometimes when you run so hard during those heavy seasons, you're trying to go into rest mode
Right.
during those 2 or 3 months off. And that's a mistake.
It's tough to come out of rest mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was in the service, I closed 3 bases. If I came to your base, I was the angel of death. If I showed up at your base, it was closing, right? And I used to have this thing I call the newspaper problem. Because for the 4 or 5 months that I was closing that base, this is back when there were newspapers. I'm dating myself. But you'd have nothing to do. So you're sitting there reading the newspaper. There were no inspections. There were no exercises. There was nothing. The base was closing. Everybody's moving out. And then you would go to your new assignment, and you would go from on Friday, you left your old base where you're reading the newspaper. Monday, you show up at the new place, and everybody is maxed out. They have deployments, they have all this stuff going on. And that gear shift was really impossible. So you're right. If you can do things that will sort of fill in the trough and make it all intentional. I mean, people can take off during the slow time, but it's intentional. I know I'm taking my vacation during this time because there won't be a bunch of stuff piled up when I come back, but I won't be in that rest mode mindset because, wow, getting back up to pace is hard.
Yeah, what I do with my guys is always like, okay, you have to be here until December 15th. Okay. If you leave December 14th, you don't get your year-end bonus. And it was a big number, right? Because I want to have 6 weeks off. I want them to have 6 weeks off that's basically paid. So their bonus covered that if they worked, right? And then we start with what was the Chicago Flower and Garden Show. We're working inside. We're setting this up. We're building things for it. I'm doing sculpture work and all that. So now they come back. Now they kind of ease back into it. Right, we're working. We're going now. We're closing work. 80,000 people, 180,000 people come through there in a week. We land a bunch of work, get out working. It was perfect. Like you're saying, it was a really nice rhythm. They
Nice.
knew we're working until December 15th. Then we're out for
Right.
6 weeks. They can do whatever they want. It's
Yeah.
paid. They don't suffer. They don't even have to get unemployment.
Right.
It's like they
Right.
just do that and then they're back in the groove. And that became a really nice rhythm. That was the way I just developed to get through that time and made it really comfortable. It wasn't like we were killing it those months, but we understood, we navigated it so there's no hardship. And that's a win in itself.
Absolutely. And let me think about this kind of from a devil's advocate point of view. I mean, if I've got a services maintenance company and I'm going to keep going back to plumbing or AC, HVAC, those people are certified in that. So if my business has a slow time and I'm going to try to move into a new line of business to kind of fill in the trough in my business model, I think there must be a challenge when the new lines of business you might want to go into are either in a different area of certification, so you don't have the people to do that work. And so you face trying to convince your existing people, hey, why don't you go get licensed in this other thing so we can take on this new line of business? Is there a similar kind of challenge in this area that I mean I've experienced with trying to do different software packages or different programming languages, but I think there must be if I'm certified in this particular thing as a worker, I'm going to be really hesitant to necessarily pick up another certification.
Yeah, I think it depended on the business. Again, we were literally outside. We're a landscaper. We're water feature builders, right? So we
Sure.
were dictated by the weather. That's just we're not doing anything in that weather. So that was, but you're right. If you go there, do they want another certification? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But if you say what you have to do, I think, Stephen, is go, okay, I'd like you to get this certification as well. And by doing so, you're going to get this, this, and this. Okay. We're gonna make this, you're not going to be doing a new job per se. You may do a little bit, but you may run that new job. You may run the new people on top of that, because if you're in, say, HVAC, we got HVAC, we got plumbing. Well, and inclement year, super hot summer, that can be $500,000, $1 million to a business, right? Because everything's breaking. Rain, heavy rains, great for roofing. Okay, every leak is exposed. You can do a lot more work. Okay, heat, extreme colds, furnaces are going. You're doing so. Those guys kind of live for those things. You know what I mean? So they got to ramp that up and everything else. But I think if you want to expand that way, for me, I do the certifications like first, obviously, it increases their pay. If you could get certified in this, because every certification, every license makes money. Okay. So every time we get one of those, especially when one certified person can have 4 people under them doing the work, that's usually how it works, right? We're certified, but not every person. So you're going to leverage. So you have
Right.
to explain to leverage and compensate them for that. and they're going to be minimized on that. But hey, we're going to bring on this person or that person. We'll get them dialed, and you're going to oversee it, and then you can begin that kind of expansion process. That's off the top of my head right here, right? Thinking that's the way I would use it.
Well, and I think you just made the point that you made earlier in our talk, where your duty as an owner or as a leader to sell the job doesn't start when the person signs on the line that is dotted and becomes your
That's right.
employee. You've got to sell your vision for where you're trying to take your business. And it's not there's this lady she's worked for me for a long time. She and I've been different companies. And very early when she and I were working together, I happened to be the boss and I said, I want you to do this. And she said, okay. She didn't agree with it. So I started explaining to her why we should do it. She said, whoa, 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 Steve, time out. You're the boss. I'm going to do what you're telling me to do. You're wasting both of our time by trying to get me to agree with it, because I'm not going to. You're not going to talk to me enough to make me agree with it. And I really came away from that with the idea of getting my people on board first. So it's kind of their idea. If the people in your crew are coming to you and they say, hey, we're slack at this time of year, I bet you if I went and got this other certification, I could help us make money during those slack times a year. You've got to jump on that like crazy,
Right.
because if they're coming to you with it, you as the boss don't have to convince them. They're convincing you. And that's huge. That's a sales job both directions then.
Yeah, it's awesome. Man, if they're raising their hand, call on them.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. What do you got? Like you said, whiteboard, man. Let's put this stuff on the whiteboard.
Yeah. And
Let's
so
go.
often
Let's see what we got,
Yeah, and so often we ignore it because we're not ready. I mean, we're used to all the ideas have to come out of this. It can't come from other people. I'll be honest. I mean, a lot of the ideas are garbage. I get that. A lot of my ideas are garbage.
But
But
yeah.
you've got to really not make people feel bad for bringing up a bad idea, because their next one may be a winner.
Yeah, it's what we do. Like I want problem solvers on the team. I want everybody to be a problem solver. So I had learned the 3S system, right? So there's a problem, and you know what most employees do, they sit down and look at the problem and they don't do anything else. So what I want you to explain the situation. Then I want you to give me a couple of solutions. Then they want you to give me your suggestion of the solution. Which one would you do? Bring that to me. And if you say, hey, solution number 2 is what I'd pick, and I go, that's almost perfect, but solution 3, you're going to run into this on number 2, and number 3, you won't have that. Let's go with 3. And they're going to go, oh, yeah, you're right. Great. Now they learned, but now they're also in problem-solving mode. It's the same thing with that. When they're empowered to create solutions, that's when they're going to start raising their hand about these slow times. Or you bring them into the board and say, nothing's off base.
Right.
Everything's on par. We're just going to fill this board, and it's 4x8. Okay, we're going to fill this sucker. I want it. We're not leaving until it's full. So I want whatever you got. Nothing's stupid. Nothing is stupid. Put it on there, and we'll cross off stuff that work. We'll pro and con it. This will be I'm buying pizza. Man, we're going to be here for lunch, so let's get working. And then you'll see that inclusion, bringing them into the process, that gives them ownership, because if their idea is chosen or just the ability to contribute, that's recognition, right? We said purpose, recognition, and quality pay. That's recognition, man. You're worth something. Your ideas are worth something to the company. I love it.
Yeah, it's not just what you're producing, it's what you're going to create with the team. And the thing we all have to realize as owners, as founders, there's a trust gap that we have. I mean, because a lot of times I've lost my cool and I've snapped at people. And every time I've done that, I've burned some trust. And so it's going to be difficult for you to bring everybody. I was just working with a client. So I do founder mentoring for a university nearby here. And one of the companies that I'm mentoring, the founder is very brilliant, but very hard to work with. And he has burnt all the bridges with all the people in his company. He knows who I'm talking about. And I've told him this. And so what he wanted to do was I gave him a couple of books to read. One of my favorites is The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. It's a short book. It is a fantastic, fantastic book on how to delegate. And I gave that book to him and he just fell in love with it. And he decided he was going to bring everybody in and talk to them about it. And I said, no. none of them are going to trust that you're actually going to do this. You have to start doing it quietly and realize where you've burnt trust and start building that trust back up. And a lot of people, I think, in the owner community and in the sort of founder community that I work with, they've gotten where they are because they were willing to take some big risks. They've gotten where they are on the force of their personality. And to be told now that they have to bring people along, it's hard for them to hear because,
Yes.
I'm the boss. I tell people what to do and they do it. And that's true, but that means 100% of the business's success or failure is on you. And if you can get 80% on you and 20% on them, it starts to take some of the load off of you. But it's not, you're not going to flip a switch and make this happen if you've been managing by yelling at people.
That's right. So true.
Fix that.
It's a hard thing to swallow. Like I said, my first 20 was that build and build, and I'm out front, I'm running, I'm the guy, I'm all this stuff, and I wasn't really paying attention to the house. It's like, wait a minute, all this stuff in the business is doing its own thing or not doing anything because I'm too busy out, beating my chest saying I'm the man. So that was kind of the downfall of my business. Even though 0809 happened, it only exposed all the stuff that I ignored during all my growth time. So it's really interesting. And it was, like I said, I could work with people, the right people, but I could also get rid of people really fast. Like,
Sure.
and I considered it my superpower. I could tell that they weren't gonna they weren't gonna make it, but it's just for whatever they could have if I spent some time. But
Right.
I just didn't
Well,
have the time.
and if you've got a team of 10 people and one's not pulling their weight, that's 10%. That's a
Yep.
huge number on a small
Yep.
team. It's different when you've got a team of 100 and one's not pulling their weight. Well,
Right.
the team can carry that one person until they figure it out. But yeah, I mean, especially when you're trying to grow your business, it's a real fine line to walk because your business will succeed in spite of us behaving because it's all on us and we don't have a lot of bandwidth for people to have other ideas, but it's not going to grow. You might just barely make it, but you're absolutely right. A big economic reversal will happen or something, a line of credit will fall through, you'll lose a big customer, and suddenly you by yourself can't fix it.
That's right. Exactly what happens. And look out. You lose the business, lose the home, you got to move on. The whole snowball starts. So yeah, it's really good. It's a great insight. I think, to kind of, when I look at this from like a team building perspective, recruiting, we talked about recruiting, bringing the right people in. I think where a lot of people, and I want to get your kind of view on this, Stephen, they haven't built anything where someone wants to come to. This is not build it, they'll come thing. What I'm saying is, like, they haven't, I use this example often. Like, everyone wants A players, right? Hey, I want
Sure.
all A players on my team. Who doesn't? Okay. Like, I hope so. But if they come and it's a hot mess, like I bring in a sales manager, I wanted to run the sales team, but I
Right.
don't have a sales system. I don't have processes. And I bring him and say, can you create all that? I didn't come here for that.
Right.
I came
Right.
here to make guys close deals and sell. And like, I'm not building a system for you. I'm out.
Right.
He's never coming, right? So they can't, they may, even if they can sell, air quote, and sell the position, they can't keep them because they haven't built the lanes properly, right? They don't have the expectations, the consequences, how to win on the day, the week, the month, the year, right? They haven't built that stuff. They try to put that cart before the horse, so to speak, because they want to get these great people who they think are going to save their business, right? So they have to do it, and they don't because there's nothing there for them. They're like, I'd go start my own business if I got to do all this,
Sure.
right? They just want to win. So I think I'd like to get your take on that because I always thought the only way you're going to get winners on a team is if you've got a place for them to fit and win.
Yeah, it's the thing we have to realize is our A players, they have the most options. They could jump like that. So if we've built a C organization and we start hiring A players to fix it, one of the organizations I worked with, they classified their salespeople, and they were either outside dogs, which would mean they were great with the customer, they were great in the field, they would, do anything for the customer, build the relationship. But the minute they'd come inside, they were peeing on the rugs. They were toxic, awful people to have inside the company. And then there were inside dog salespeople. These were people who were aces at managing the system and making all the levers work. And those two personalities are totally different. And so you've got an A player in that outside dog as long as they're outside. But in that big company, we would start to pull the A players inside. And now they're having to care about systems and finance and legal and all this other stuff. And they burn out really fast. And I think that proves your point that if you can grow one of your people to be that superstar, that's terrific. But if you hire somebody in, especially if they don't have a stake in the company or some real skin in the game, they're going to hop on you, you know. So I think there's a challenge though. Sometimes we put off hiring good people by saying I'm embarrassed about the state of my company, so I'm not going to bring people in. And that's one of the things that I see a lot of benefit from this new fractional model, where you bring in a fractional executive. And I always tell people when they ask me, what's a fractional COO? I said, well, it's a fancy executive word for temp. So it's a temp. You know, you bring it in somebody and you don't have to care that you don't have everything perfect because this person's not forever. They're going to be here for 3-6 months. They're going to help you make it good, and they'll help you interview and hire the person who can come in and now run that for you or benefit from that system. So I think that there is a real, I think there's been a big change with that whole fractional executive mindset where you can bring in somebody for a short-term engagement and it's not forever.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I have a client very similar. So I'm coaching, right? We're a business coach. We're doing all these different levels in the business. So he's hiring a new office person, okay, because he needs to replace the other one. And a lot of systems aren't built. So we're meeting, I mean, it's a local, so we're meeting. And I said, okay, I'll be working with you. That's what I'm telling her. Because I tell him, yeah, I'm your coach, but you ain't working with her. I'll be working with her. I'm going to get her squared away. She's going to build the systems under my direction. You go out and do what you do. He's like, I like this coaching thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, because I'm into that. I will
Yep,
do that, and I
yep.
can hold her at a high level of accountability and everything else, and make sure she gets it done. And he can do his thing. That's the beauty. Just like you're saying, and you're totally right to talk about this fractional. I've seen it. CEO, CMO, COO, all the fractional stuff. I've got CFOs for a lot of my clients, especially in the construction industry. These guys are, they're doing, when you get up 9, 10, $15 billion a year, you're not paying attention to all the money. A lot of stuff is seeping through the cracks. And you bring these guys and get you squared away from a tax standpoint, from a profitability standpoint. It's amazing what they can do in the short term.
Right.
And then they can go real short, like, hey, all right, we talk once a quarter now. When they come in, they review. It's really fantastic.
Well, and I think so many people, they think, well, I've got my accounting for that, or I've got my law firm for that. But one of the things I really see the benefit of this fractional model is when I'm in as a fractional CRO, a sales role, and I'm working with those outside contractors, I'm challenging them. You know, if you're relying on your accountant to be your CFO, then that accountant's going to overlook things that maybe their accounting firm should have caught. But if you've got some external thing, then they're holding each other accountable. The accounting firm's watching your fractional person, but your fractional person's watching the accounting firm. And
Love it.
that could be a good thing. It's kind of like you should change your insurance provider every 2 years because you're going to get a better rate. Maybe don't have somebody fractional there forever, but just bring somebody in to have a look.
Right. Yeah, it's so important. And yeah, I attest to the insurance thing too.
Sure.
Just got all kinds of stories on that.
Yeah.
But it's exactly that. And I call it outside eyes. I said the outside eyes are what can really, it can compress time for your business, right? Save you a lot of times in bad decisions, cost you mistakes, all that kind of stuff. But it can really set your course.
Sure.
It brings a higher level of accountability. They will see stuff. I see stuff the moment I walk in the door, even the virtual door. I'm like, what are you doing this?
Right.
Oh, I didn't. Why is that bad? Well, yeah. And I'll tell them like, oh, I had no idea. Exactly.
Sure.
You had no idea. I see it in the first 5 minutes. You've been looking at it for 5 years.
Well, and so often when I'm the man, when I'm the person running things, everybody who works for you is terrified to challenge you on stuff.
Yep.
So you bring in those outside eyes. There was one of the things that I've often found is I would negotiate contracts for my company and I'd get them done in 2 or 3 days. I then had somebody start negotiating them for me, and she would take 2 or 3 weeks. And so finally I sat down with her and we're going line by line through. And I said, well, hey, why are you pushing back on that? She said, well, I'll get fired if I don't. I said, who's going to fire you? I'm not going to fire you. She said, yeah, but I don't know that. So I have to be a lot more careful than you do because you're the boss. You're not going to fire yourself. So I think if you're going to bring in an outsider and you've gone through the effort, you've talked to references and you trust that outsider, I'm bringing you in. I better listen to you. Otherwise, I'm wasting my money and
That's
your
it.
time.
That's
You
it.
know? Yeah.
Do what I tell you.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just
Or
do what I tell you.
honestly, I'll see you in 6 months when this all blows up in your face and you need me to come in
That's
and
right.
fix it. It's
That's right.
hey, it's
I had a guy like that wanted me to help him. I said, okay, man, let's do this. I'm ready to get it. We need to get now, right? He goes, well, then he comes to me, well, I've got my biggest customer. I got like 60 days to do this thing. So let me get that taken care of. I'm like, no, you need me now. I'll take care of them. You haven't taken care of them. How are you going to take care of them now?
right.
I said, you don't know how. And he didn't do it. Well, sorry for him. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Sure.
sometimes people, they don't have the right sense of urgency. And again, we're not here beating ourselves. Hey, we're the greatest coaches in the world. Just, it's the idea of outside eyes, of getting that other opinion. It's served me when I've ignored it. It's hurt me. When I listen to it, it helps me. And there's pretty much no crossover.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like, it pretty much is, it's 100% on both sides. Okay. So we need to realize that.
Yeah, something changed for me when I left Palisade a year ago. I was in here. I was in my home office all the time, all through COVID. I've been working from home since 2005. I mean, every company I've been in has been remote. I started going to an incubator, a business incubator down about 45 minutes from here, because I'm in there with 80 other people who are starting their business. And we bump into each other and we're talking, we're going back and forth. Everybody's got problems. And they challenge me in a way that I don't challenge myself. And the people who work for me don't challenge me because they're founders too. They're doing their thing. And so one of the things that I really believe in is if you don't get out of your space and go somewhere else with other founders or other people in your situation, that's a quick and easy thing you can start doing to start challenging yourself to say, hey, am I the problem? What can I improve on? And the thing I love about it is it's basically free. I'm only paying for the desk rental, if you will.
I'm
And
in the same place. I'm in the
yeah,
same place, Stephen. Big co-working place. Spectacular.
yeah,
Okay. They just brought through today 300 high school students who are interested in the hospitality industry
cool.
because they're a big here. They own this big Hendrix properties and all this stuff, and they're teaching them. And these guys, so they're giving them tours. They're looking at me doing podcasts, waving to me. And I'm giving the wave over here.
Right.
It's just, but then I'm with other owners here and you're exchanging that energy and you get to speak as equals.
Yes.
Right. It's their company, your company. So you can speak that language and you can pull from each other. I highly recommend it. If someone has the opportunity, have those places to go.
Yeah.
If you're an at-home worker, like I tried it. I'm like, I couldn't get things done. I couldn't succeed at home. I get a little bit, but I'm like, I need that energy. I need that whatever it is. It's amazing. Worth every penny. And it's not a lot of money, but totally worth every cent and every dollar.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the good news is Starbucks kind of saw the light recently and they started
Huh?
letting people be in there working again. So if you live in a place that doesn't have anything like that, there's probably a coffee shop right near you. I tend to look for local ones where you're going
Yep.
to run
Me
into
too.
other local people. But hey, go spread out for an hour and a half. A lot of them would love to have your business. And the reason I do Starbucks from time to time is they started refilling my iced tea and I'm all about the free stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
I used to go there all the time, and then COVID happened, then they stopped people and no people. And I'm like, I haven't been back.
sure.
And now they remodel, now they don't ever back in. I go, sorry, I got other places to go. I got new places now.
Yep, absolutely.
I got new friends. I got new friends now.
You
I
treated me
appreciate
badly, and
you.
I'm
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
not in a
I'm
big
going to
hurry
go
to go
somewhere
back.
else. So
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, Stephen, this has been absolutely fantastic. Had no idea where this conversation was going to go because
these are
that's how
fun.
we roll.
Yes,
But they're awesome. I mean, we hit some really, really good stuff. Very valuable, I believe. Really stuff when guys are thinking they got to get up, right, and look down a little bit more on their business, from a higher view, and kind of use these takeaways that you shared today to really start to really look at their business a little bit differently. How are they really going to grow? What are they really going to do with this? What are some of these things to attract the best people? We hit a lot on that. And I think that's really powerful because that's probably one of the biggest hindrances to almost any business, regardless of what the industry, right?
Right. Right. And
Good
I keep
stuff.
telling my boys, if you think having a boss is difficult, have a customer. Customers are
Yeah.
a lot harder than bosses
Yeah.
are. And
And there's a lot
so
more of them.
yeah, and so I think that you're absolutely right. One of the things that excites me about the space that you're in, that your owners are in, is that this is only going to grow. I mean, the thing is, houses and commercial properties are far more complicated than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And so I think that this is one of those areas you can't offshore it. You can't, robots aren't going to do it. It's got to be somebody getting their hands on it and making it work. And I love what you said earlier about that sort of spirit of being kind of inquisitive and problem solving, as opposed to just saying, it's broke. I don't know. It's code 66. I can't do
Right.
nothing with it. It's,
Yeah.
I think that you get that behavior. One, people come in with it. I mean, that some people are, some people aren't, but you can sure turn it off in somebody if you don't sort of nurture it. So I think that's the exciting thing is, finding that, and this industry's growing.
Yeah. I think I deem it blue collar is going to be the new white collar.
Yep.
They're going to be the new wealthy and they're on their track. And one of the goals I have is to prepare them to scale, get their business down so they can literally scale to meet the demands. And that goes down to getting the right people, right? And we work like here, like I said, with this place, we do all this stuff for the trades. We have paid internships. They do also kids can come in high school and get paid and try masonry. Oh, I don't
Right.
like that. Okay, well, good, good. You know, you don't want to do it. Okay, go to the other thing, right?
Right.
But they really can get their hands on, so we can develop the next generation of these guys who can work with their hands and build stuff that can't be replaced by AI or anything. So yeah, I love it. I love the industry. I love the trades. I kind of like that. I like that adapting a market, a service to the new technology that's coming to just make
Right.
them better. Too many people think it's going to take their work. Well, you're not looking at it right. Again, you're
Right.
not solving a problem. You're
Right.
just whining,
Right.
being a victim,
Well, and
right?
I think the key that we've all got to get our heads around is the future of our business is it's going to be somebody who's wearing an eyepiece that's I was talking to one of my kids about this. He's doing the airframe stuff, and they're using virtual reality to see, okay, I'm looking at that part, boom, they've got all the information they need right there and available. And they've just got to be comfortable with that sort of that technology coming in. There's a venture capital firm called Bessemer. I don't know if they're venture capital, private equity. I can never keep anything straight. But they talk about the difference between a founder and an entrepreneur. And the founder is the person who's really good with their hands, who's built a really quality reputation because they're an amazing craftsman at their trade, but they're not a business person. And so many, I think we've both seen businesses that the person running it is world class at what they do, but they're not an entrepreneur. They don't think in terms of repeatability and scale and all that kind of stuff. And most entrepreneurs, and I thought I was both, you can't be both. It turns out I'm an entrepreneur. And that was a hard thing to realize because you want to be the founder. You want to be the,
You're talentless.
yeah, I know, right? You're just a guy who can make money, and I'm like, making money is important. I like making money. You know, Wells Fargo doesn't take good intentions as my mortgage payment. So
Yes, I tried to deposit all my likes on Facebook, but they wouldn't take them for money. But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right, and it's awesome. I mean, it just is. There's so much to this. We could go on for hours.
absolutely.
Steve, how can people get in touch with you, follow you, whatever we got to do here? Because
Sure.
you're bringing a lot of value, and I'm sure you got a lot more to offer.
I appreciate it. So my website is my stage and the number 2.com. That's where I talk a lot about how to sort of reinvent yourself, reinvent your career, pivot out of what you are into what you want to do. The other thing I'm doing next is helping people who've grown to a point where they're getting a lot of leads in the top of their sales funnel, but because they've gotten to a certain size, whether they've got lawyers or they've got finance people, the middle of their funnel is slowing them down. And so kind of helping, I'm thinking of it as being a plumber for the sales funnel. You're trying to make
There you
deals go
go.
through faster. So look me up on LinkedIn or mystage2.com. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you for the time today. Brought a lot of great value to the podcast. We always appreciate that. And until the next one, we will see everyone on STS next time.
It was great.